Cool. Cool. So this is my talk, Future Trends in Semantic Wikis. Note that it's not about semantic. It doesn't include Semantic Media Wiki in the title, but I guess we'll get to that. So you know, I think every once in a while about the long term, and I guess everyone does. You know, what will things look like 5, 10, 15, etc. years from now? I mean, the whole concept of semantic wikis has only been around for it's been around for 10 years, I guess, as a concept, and been around for about 5 or 6 years as an actual type of application. So what are things going on now that we can sort of extrapolate and say this is will help us see where things are going? The first, and I guess maybe the biggest thing, is an explosion of data. I mean, there's been exponential growth in the amount of online data and the amount of data being collected for who knows how long. The concept that there's a term called big data, which is becoming more and more wide usage, and there's starting to be conferences and academic discussion about handling whatever it is, exabytes or whatever it is of data. This is totally tied in the growth in the amount of RDF being produced, the desire to have your information be widely readable, ongoing with that, there's a big growth in the generic tools that can use RDF and other types of data. It's not my specialties, so I don't know. About like general tools. There's like the Hadoops of the world and all of that as well. But Semantic Media Wiki is definitely taking place within this bigger context of just a lot of research and development around all this stuff. Yeah, so I talked about it a little before, I guess during the tutorial, but this trend is, it's already happening now with as far as Semantic Media Wiki. There's Marcus right now is spearheading an effort to get Semantic Media Wiki to be able to store directly to an RDF triple store, which is something you can already do with different extensions, but it's more of a hack than it should be. I think that really represents the future for Semantic Media Wiki. Who knows whether it'll take 5 years or 10 years or what for most people to be able to have access to an RDF triple store as opposed to just MySQL and Postgres and all that kind of stuff. But eventually, I think that will be a standard thing that people use because it just makes a lot of sense. It's more scalable. It fits the data. It's more generic. So yeah, I can't put any years on that or guesses, but I think that's where things are going. Okay, yeah, I already. Those are all the things. Oh yeah, and the one other big advantage of using RDF that I didn't mention is something that other people have talked about, which is being able to query data from multiple sources at the same time in a natural, in an organic kind of way, where you don't have to worry about moving everything into one place and then doing the querying. You can keep everything where it is, and that includes both public sources of data and when you're within a business, data, enterprise integration type stuff where you have all these different internal stores using different software. But if they all produce to the same format, to RDF or something like it, then you can use Sparkle or whatever else to get all the data together without having to move it from where it is.
Do you want to have discussion now, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Because I'd push back on most of the stuff.
Wow, excellent.
I think that relational databases are far more scalable than existing RDF triple stores.
True.
They're far more robust and reliable. There is, existing federated query systems off of SQL that have been around for many years and which have far better query optimization than we get, for example, in SQL. And generic tools, it's kind of hard for me to. I'm not sure, but at least least for the first two. I'm not sure that those are advantages relative to RDBMSs.
Really, even querying data from multiple sources. That I mean, I just haven't heard of anyone saying, let's move all our data. Let's make a MySQL representation of all our data in different places, and then use one of the some federated store to combine it all together.
I mean, a lot of companies have multiple existing databases, and they have federated systems that run over, Oracle plus MySQL plus DB2, right? These big databases, because it is simply infeasible to put them together, both politically and maybe.
Okay. This slide actually is not talking about the general differences between RDF triple stores for triple data and related databases, but for the actual implementation that we have in SMW right now, namely using the same MySQL database that the wiki uses. I think then those items make sense.
It's certainly true if we're comparing, an arbitrary RDF data store, triple store, to a single column in MySQL. Right. Then that starts to make sense. But if what you're really talking about doing is re-engineering the data structure, the data fabric underneath SMW, I think there may be reasons to use a triple store, but if the choice is use a triple store or re-engineer the MySQL stuff to use a really nice SQL-based implementation, right, again, then I push back. Okay. I mean, there's reasons having to do with the data model being nice, right, and much closer to the surface. There's reasons having to do with flexibility in the schema and normalization, but I would push it back against these reasons because
Okay,
it's
well,
the question of who maintains them, right? Who does it and who maintains it?
Yeah, a lot of it turns out that.
I have a few responses to that. One is that to some extent, what I'm saying is true regardless of the specific name of the software being used as the specific implementation on the back end. If it's generic but it's done through a relational database model where you can still have a federated way or whatever of querying a bunch of systems, then this still is true even if if I replace RDF with some more generic term for that kind of system. The second thing is I'm aware that RDF triple store, to the extent I'm aware of how they are at all, I'm aware that there are problems now with reliability and scalability and stuff. But what I've heard is that I know that's the direction that a lot of people think it's going in, and how things are now doesn't necessarily reflect how they'll be 10 years from now.
Well, that's true, and I think that it's instructive that many of the most scalable triple stores right now are built on database technology. That's what they use as their storage foundation.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Otherwise, they're just in memory.
Well, yeah.
Blow out of memory and stop.
Yeah.
With MySQL would add more sentence.
Well, Oracle already has
Oracle
does.
their
I
RDF
was
storage.
thinking RDF. I'm going
Right.
to say but should MySQL be picked or not?
Their framework is open. You can copy it.
They're owned by the same people, so.
Well, now they are, yeah.
Plus one.
Well, that wasn't true.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. This next slide sort of encapsulates that same thing. That yes, I'm presuming that things are going to be different in the future.
Anybody here currently using an RDF triple store? 1, 2,
I mean, what do you
3,
use
4.
for your...
Ours is called Parallel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've got an expert in here.
Yeah.
RDF.
Yeah.
I think it's
Because I asked. Can't be a problem.
Okay, so what does all of this mean for Semantic Media Wiki? Here I've listed what I see as the main groups of functionality that come to you with Semantic Media Wiki and its extensions. Some of these lists are very non-comprehensive. But you've got storage, which is actually taking the wiki text and putting it into the database, then editing, display, which people have talked a lot about, browsing, which is sort of tied in with display, because there's like the exhibit format, which is a combination of both. import and workflow. So what happens when Semantic Media Wiki moves to an RDF-based system? Which of those will still be necessary to have within Semantic Media Wiki? Here's a case in point which sort of got me thinking more about this whole subject. There's a new, not really even released yet, library called Spark. There's the URL. It's I guess in the next slide. Do I even mention?
Yeah, Denny is.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, I thought I had his name. Yeah, I only know about it because Denny Brandishich, who's one of the co-authors of Semantic Media Wiki, and I talk to every once in a while, told me about it. It's yet another project he's working on. And the idea is it's a JavaScript library that just calls Sparkle queries directly within the page, and then uses all sorts of different formats to display it. And it's such a simple concept that to me it just makes sense as soon as you hear it.
So let me interject here. We wrote a very simple little piece of software that implements an ADO.NET data provider for Sparkle queries.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know how many people are familiar with the .NET architecture, but ADO is Microsoft's data access layer, and by writing a Sparkle data provider, it means that all of the widgets that exist in the .NET framework, both from Microsoft and other people, for displaying the results of a query just work.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that is cool. I mean, the nice thing about RDF and Sparkle is it's so you know the structure of the data. It's so generic and standardized that you can build all these cool tools, and you'll know that they'll work with with any set of data that you apply it to. So it just opens up a big canvas to work with. So yeah, let me just to do just to very briefly show this is their homepage and their cool logo. Here's like a call to this JavaScript library, or it's not even a call. It's just it's all defined within a div attribute or something. And then here's some examples. This is, it's all the stuff you would expect it to look like. Here's a little table. They got this from DBpedia's RDF export. And here's another pie chart. I think this is JQplot. Oh, whatever it is, it's like it all makes sense. It's you have the RDF. It does the querying, and then it just displays it however you want it to. So yeah, I think there'll be a lot more like that in the future. Whether Spark becomes a big thing, or whether it becomes a set of other standard tools, or whether there's 50 different tools to do it. Yeah. So once that happens, there's no need really for the wiki to query its own data, because you can just use all these third-party tools that are that presumably have more development time and effort behind them into doing the same thing. So what's still needed? I contend that this is what things look like in the future, which of course doesn't mean the next month or next year, but I think that's the trend where things are going. Storage is, Semantic Media Wiki still needs to store the data. It still needs to provide a way to edit the wiki text and create a framework around that in one way or another, or maybe multiple ways. And you still need to be able to import, although that's not nearly as important as it was before, because this Sparkle querying allows you to keep things where they are, and also display, do all the display of stuff regardless of whether it's in this wiki or that other wiki, or coming from your mail server or whatever else it is, So yeah, so the other stuff can all be done using generic tools. Yeah, so, right. So the tools to edit the content will be just as important. And then at some point you start thinking, what does it mean to be a semantic wiki when you take all that stuff out? What are we actually talking about? And I think the real strength of semantic wikis is that it's a framework for text-based structured data. That's really the heart of it. It's all done within text, which is an extremely flexible data storage format compared to anything else. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's like an alternate definition for semantic wikis. Oh yeah, and the other big advantage is that it's easy to do diffs, which is very hard to do with like a regular relational database kind of thing. Like, somebody went in and made changes. How do you reflect a set of changes, or how do you reflect a set of changes to a data structure? That's really difficult to do normally, but very easy to do when it's all just a set of text pages. Yeah, there are some semantic wikis that don't fall within that whole text base. This is sort of meandering at this point, but there are some applications like OntoWiki and whatever that don't fall within that structure. That they have their own separate set of fields that you use to annotate a page versus having everything be in the text of it. I think that's the wrong way to do it. A little editorial. Yeah, and so, if you want to keep extrapolating, why do we need to have the editing be done within the wiki code? Maybe at some point when this thing becomes more popular and there are other semantic wiki applications that get out there, or other wikis that start developing true, semantic wiki technology, basically sort of imitating what Semantic MediaWiki has accomplished. Maybe they'll become a standard format for defining templates and defining forms and all that stuff, and then there could be third-party libraries for editing, given a form definition and given the set of templates or whatever they'll be called to do that, which would give all the benefits of standardization. What are other unknowns? Oh yeah, this is chin scratchers. Will all wikis one day be semantic? I mean, is that where things are headed? Will all CMSs one day be wikis? The WordPresses and Drupals, etc. of the world. Will they all, see the light and see how much it makes sense to keep, an entire version history of their content? Yeah, and so could one day the concept of semantic wiki go away because everything has that capability, has the version control capability and the structured data storage capability. And I guess the last big question: what will Wikipedia look like? I think that's it. Yeah.
It'll look the same.
It'll look the same, right?
Decent
Yeah.
editor. Oh yeah, so that's it. Yeah. I look at the wiki and I think it's kind of like SVN or some sort of centralized revision control system. I look at SVN and it's just about drawing up among the tech community. We're all going to distributed version control a la Git.
Right.
Is there a place for a distributed version control back-end wiki-like thing?
That's
Okay.
yeah, you just blew my mind. I don't know.
Sweet.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, people have talked about, even within MediaWiki, people have talked about like offline editing, and you make your set of changes and then you merge it back in somehow. It's a hard problem, but it's been done with Git. I don't know how, so maybe. So I guess everyone agrees.
Universal.
Yes. Yeah. All right.
I'll push back.
Yeah. Cool.
I guess. So I think that things happen often not because of. Many things happen because of technical coolness, but things tend to get big because of commercial coolness.
Right.
Right. And I don't. And while I admit that, that the idea that we'll have distributed data stores with distributed tools somehow synchronizing on top of them, kind of an interesting technical problem. I can't think of a lot of commercial drivers for building it that way. When I think of commercial drivers, I think of, how does a company standardize and control their data?
Sure.
How does a company control its presentation to the outside world? How does an advertiser ensure that their ad is going to be placed in front of the appropriate eyeball? Things like this. And I don't see these technical changes in infrastructure pushing forward any of those economic drivers. So that's sort of the source of my skepticism.
Well, I can think of different answers to that. I'd say 2 words: enterprise integration.
Yes.
Okay, so now we pick the most conservative part
How many corporate intranets have mirrored a subset of Wikipedia to keep track of corporate intelligence for other companies, and could instead live sync that in from Wikipedia, and they'd have one central repository of IBM has this many employees at this location? I think the distributed one has a huge commercial application.
Well, but who? All right, so
Wikipedia is not commercial either, but it's still driving all of us every day.
Wikipedia is. Let me stipulate
case.
that Wikipedia is way off and to the right on this. Again, it's sort of there's. I think it was the special thing. But why? But how is that? Let me put it this way: who's the customer that pays big money for it?
Well, sorry.
Don't know yet. Agreed.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's. If we create enough value, I think that it can surprise us.
I think it's always a combination of public and private data. So you have these massive companies with different divisions and departments, and they all have their data store, and you want to be able to view it all from one place and query things against one another, and it's a hard problem, and there's a lot of money at stake in the whole thing. I mean, if you can easily hire Accenture, or SAP, or whatever, and pay them any amount of millions of dollars to try to put it into a coherent framework.
Right, but I believe the reason that Accenture, SAP, the usual suspects, right, charge millions of dollars and have a failure rate, that is embarrassing.
Sure. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Right. Is not. It's not that we could give them a semantic wiki and then all of a sudden be charging 50 cents and 100% success. It's that. I believe that the problem's actually harder than that. It's not the tools, right? It's actually getting agreements in the company about the semantics of the data, right? Which is primarily a social thing and much harder. And then once you have that agreement, you can do it in the database. You can do it with lifting. You can do it with IBM's desktop, or you can do it in semantic wikis if you happen to have an RDM. But
yeah, sure. No, I agree with you.
The single source of data is a dream, but I don't think that semantic wikis are a massive advance on our capability to deliver that dream. Put it that way.
All right.
I mean, just quad technology.
It's not the entire solution, but I think it's a better solution than the standard existing tools.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a couple comments as well. First of all, I think as far as the benefits of semantic wikis, I think the areas that you see semantic wikis being the strongest are where you have a well-defined scope, where you can actually have this is about X. These are, and therefore you can kind of understand what the implicit relationships are. Now, as far as your first question, will all wikis be one-day semantic? I expect most of them to be. However, in response to your last one, what will Wikipedia look like? I don't think Wikipedia will ever be fully semantic for one important reason. There are too many different interpretations of the same data. And in order to have Wikipedia be semantic, you'd have to have one overarching framework, which Wikipedia is too diverse even, to I think, to be able to do. It's just, what's the relationship of X to Y? Well, there's about 5 different ways to interpret that.
Well, on the subject of Wikipedia, I've actually been involved in some meetings talking about this kind of stuff. I guess it's a good opportunity to talk about it briefly. There are ways to do it. I mean, if you restrict what you're talking about to just info box data, that already solves a lot of the problem right away. And
Yes,
then,
that would.
yeah, and if you don't need to, if you're not worried about conforming to a standard ontology, that also makes things easier, because you just say that the relationship of nationality is just the Wikipedia URL, whatever it is, Wikipedia wiki nationality, something like that.
Like using the info box example, there are as I mentioned before, there's 20 different ways that Wikipedia has info boxes for just simply geographic locations.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, if standardizing those into one consistent set, even semantically enabling them, great. I would probably even pay money for that. But
yeah, but as with most things, it doesn't have to be perfect to be an improvement over the existing state of things, which is quite poor.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I guess we can have a really good discussion from now on. I think Dr. Marcus will lead us with next session. It's a group discussion about semantic media wikis used in government and enterprise, I believe. So everybody is really encouraged to talk.
Thank you.